Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I'm back with admittedly a very belated October TBR. And you might be asking, Dana, why are you even making this video? We're a week into the month, why don't you just wait and do a wrap up? And the answer is because, my friends, I am procrastinating doing schoolwork. So who would I be if I wasn't procrastinating something? So we're doing my October TBR. I have a big stack of books here because I'm being very ambitious. And just to show you how belated this TBR is, I've actually already finished 2 books and I'm in the middle of 2 other ones. So to just get those out of the way, I have already finished Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I'll see if I can try and, put a picture of it up here. I don't usually read a lot of horror novels or thrillers. They aren't usually my cup of tea, but I've been watching a lot of other booktubers like Kat and Noel Gallagher. They've really been inspiring me to do some spooky reads, and particularly for the month of October, I figured, why not? Why not read some horror novels? So Pet Sematary. I enjoyed it. I didn't initially find it any scarier than the other King that I've read. I've only ever read The Shining by Stephen King. And it didn't really freak me out all that much until after I finished it. And then I just kind of sat there and I thought about it. And then later that night, I was still thinking about it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm creeped out by this. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, and it was a great way to start off the month of October. The second book that I've finished already is Without You, There Is No Us by Suki Kim. This is a memoir detailing the author's experience going undercover as an English teacher in an elite boarding school in North Korea. And I adored this. I found it fascinating. It was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. It's one of the best books that I've read in 2020. It might be the best memoir I've ever read. It was just incredible. I've recommended it to anyone and everyone, and so I definitely recommend it now. It's just fascinating, and it's really, really well written. So I read this in a day. Like 10 out of 10. So I am in the middle of 2 books currently, the first of which is A History of Private Life, Revelations on the Medieval World. There is a dust jacket over there, but I just took it off while I'm reading it. This is a series of essays about the relationship between the public and the private world as it existed in the Middle Ages. It's a pretty old book. I think it's part of a larger anthology. This is volume 2, it says on the side. I don't have the other books. I actually got this from my aunt when she was moving out of her apartment. So it's, a series of essays. It's something that I'm very interested in, but it is definitely an older book. It's written like an older book. It looks very much, like a textbook. So it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but I have this thing where I cannot DNF a book, so I will finish it. It's very interesting. It's just, it's a little dull, but yeah, A History of Private Life. And then I am also in the middle of Devotions by Mary Oliver. Again, there's a dust jacket over there, but I take them off when I read. And I'm about a quarter of the way through. And I don't often read a lot of poetry. It hasn't been a big part of my repertoire in the past, but I think something about 2020 and just all of the emotions of this year that I've kind of gravitated towards poetry more. I think I've wanted something that speaks to my soul and makes me feel emotional and comforted at the same time. So I didn't really know where to start with poetry. If you have any favorite poets, please leave them down in the recommendations below. I really want to get into more poetry. So I just started off with Mary Oliver, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's very kind of calming to me, and so hopefully I will finish this by the end of the month as well. I have this big stack of books, and I tried to keep them mostly spooky themed, with a couple of nonfiction dropped in there as well. So we're just gonna go through in no particular order. Actually, let me start with this. So I think the next book that I'm going to read is The Boatman's Daughter. This is by, Andy Davidson. I've heard conflicting reviews on this, but I'm a sucker for the Southern Gothic genre. I think we've gone over this before, and this book seems to fit very well into that niche. And so my roommate from college and we are doing kind of a book club thing where she's reading this book as well. And so it'll be very interesting to hear her opinion on this, and I'll be sure to give mine as well in my wrap up. Fingers crossed that I actually do a wrap up this month if I get to it. But yeah, The Boatman's Daughter. Next, I have another nonfiction book. This is called Killing the Black Body by Dorothy Roberts. This is a book about access to reproductive health and women's health in particular. And I believe the argument is that the war against reproductive rights is targeting women of color in particular. How the argument for pro-choice or pro-life is not just about women's health, it is very deeply tied up with race issues. So this is something I'm very interested in. I think it's a very appropriate and timely topic, and so that'll be one of my other nonfiction reads for this month. Next on my list, I got Macbeth a couple months ago. If you've watched my channel, you know that Macbeth is my favorite Shakespeare play, book, novel, whatever you want to call it, of all time. I love Macbeth. For years, I had a quote of Macbeth on my wall when I was a teenager. I was that angsty teenager. So I decided to just kind of throw this on my TBR pile. If anything gets shifted or, not read this month, it'll probably be this, just because I've already read it so many times. But, I think it'll be very atmospheric, especially around Halloween. I also am continuing to read the Witcher series. My boyfriend got me into reading these after we watched the Netflix show together. He's a big fan, and I was looking for books to read, and so he just recommended these. So I am on The Witcher 3, Baptism of Fire. So far the Witcher books for me, they're just really easy, light reads. I don't really have any strong opinions about them one way or another. They're just kind of very entertaining. And so I'll be continuing on with this one at some point in the month. Book, it kind of looks like a work of fiction, but it's actually a nonfiction book, and it's called The Beast Within, A History of the Werewolf by Adam Douglas. And so it's chronicling kind of the myth and legend and lore of werewolves from ancient Rome to modern day, and all the Victorians and the obsession with where this wolfman trope came from. And so, kind of going back to the spooky, kind of creepy books, monsters and all that, I thought this would be a really fun read for October, and I picked it up specifically for this purpose. I think it was like $2.50 at Strand Bookstore down in the basement, where they have about a bunch of used books. And then the last book on my official TBR for October is The Troop by Nick Cutter. And I first became aware of this book from Kat over at Paperback Dreams. She highly recommended this as a horror book, and it's basically about a Boy Scout troop that gets lost in the woods and then encounters a kind of genetically modified, what's the word they use? Bioengineered nightmare. So apparently this is very tense and suspenseful, and going back into the whole horror genre that I'm hoping to explore more of this month. So yeah, The Troop by Nick Cutter. So that's a very quick overview of what I'm hoping to read this month. I have a feeling I'll get through most of it just based off of my previous reading patterns. And if I finish all of that, I still have A Discovery of Witches on my shelf that I've had for 2 years now and I haven't read yet, but everyone seems to love. So if I finish all of these books and I still need something else to read, I'll just do that. But yeah, that's my October TBR. And if you have any recommendations for any other horror novels, maybe not Stephen King, I think I'm all kinged out for the season, but if you have any recommendations for other horror novels or poetry or anything that you want to share, just leave it down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please give it a like or a thumbs up. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, hopefully at the end of the month if I do a wrap-up video. So see ya!